Hey, good afternoon. My name is Ben again, and we're coming to take a look at nothing specific on Serenity, but I wanted to talk about the check engine light. Now, usually um, you get somebody who comes in and says, "Why is the check engine light on?" And you notice that, yeah, I've got a check engine light on, and I've already scanned the codes for this one. And in this case, it's P0420, which refers to catalytic converter efficiency below threshold. But what I wanted to talk about today was not P0420 or P0300 multiple misfire or um, uh, oxygen sensor response, fuel trim, anything like that. But just in general, what is a check engine light? The the check engine light is your indication that there is something wrong with the engine. Now, it might be something that you don't even feel. In the case of, let's say, P0420, doesn't affect fuel economy, doesn't affect drivability. And so if the check engine light wasn't on, I would have no idea that there was something wrong with my car. Um, on the other hand, some of them are a little bit more obvious. If you have a P0300 or a fuel trim code, you might feel rough idle, poor acceleration, fuel economy would probably go through the floor, and something that you would notice if you were paying attention. But the point is that the check engine light does not say replace this part. So like when you go to auto parts stores, they might offer a free check engine light scan, which can be useful but can also be misleading. Um, Sometimes the fix is very common. The Toyota P0172 fuel trim code was most often related to a contaminated mass airflow sensor. But does that mean that that fix is going to fix every Toyota that has a P0172? No, it doesn't. The point is that when you get a check engine light on, you have, let's say, a 1 in 10,000 chance of having a specific code, because there's at least 10,000 codes, and depending on the vehicle that you have, they're adding more all the time because the systems are getting more and more complex. There's more and more sensors on them for performance, for fuel economy, for emissions. So when you get, let's say, P0300, which refers to a random or multiple misfire, um, some people would say, oh, you need spark plugs, or oh, you need, in this case, on Serenity has a central um, ignition coil, or you need spark plug wires. Um, that is the classic shotgun approach to someone who has not diagnosed the problem. Same with P0420. Now, I don't know if you can see it down there, but that is the catalytic converter. The reason I know that I have a problem with the catalytic converter is not because I have P0420, but because I have checked the oxygen sensors to see if they're reading properly. Some people, when they see, oh, P0420, they say, okay, replace the catalytic converter, replace all the oxygen sensors, is a very poor shotgun approach to repairing that problem, because you don't repair a check engine light. The check engine light doesn't say, technician, replace this sensor, technician, replace this part, technician, adjust this thing. The check engine light is saying, I am the engine control module, And this is the data that I am seeing. I'm expecting to see a certain voltage coming out of a sensor at a certain speed, certain temperature, and whatever other internal parameters are there. It's not saying replace the oxygen sensor. Sometimes it is obvious. You get an oxygen sensor code that refers to the heater circuit, and then, well, what, do you just go and replace that part? It could be something, in the case of P0420, it could be something as simple as an air leak, because extra oxygen sneaking in past a poor gasket or a poor seal, or if it's starting to rust out, will throw off the sensor readings. So you don't have a problem with the catalytic converter itself, but you have an air leak. Similarly, if you have, let's say, P0300 random misfire, it could be, you might have to ask yourself the question, when is it happening? Is it happening when it's wet? Is it happening when it's hot, when it's cold? That could mean, you know, you could have problems with coil, you could have problems with spark plug wires, you could have a problem with the spark plug itself, you could have a problem with the fuel injectors, which are hidden back here. Barring that, you might have problems with timing. If a timing belt skips a tooth, you might have problems with compression if the head gasket is starting to leak, or if you have a problem with coolant leaking into the cylinder. Any of those things could cause a multiple misfire. Another common issue, you could have a faulty idle intake valve. If this thing is sticking closed, not enough air is going to be getting in, and it's going to create a misfire. So many people, when they get into auto repair, if they know a little, you might have your basic auto repair toolbox, wrenches, sockets, screwdrivers, stuff like that, which is great if you can identify the problem immediately. Like if you're saying, okay, I got squeaky brakes, I can replace squeaky brakes with this basic set of tools. But if you have something like a check engine light, you need an entirely different set of tools. First of all, what you need is a repair manual. The repair manual is the thing that's going to tell you what the engine should be doing. Let's say how much voltage should be coming out of a spark plug. How much voltage should the oxygen sensor be reading? How much voltage should the alternator be putting out? What should be the resistance between the battery positive terminal and the ground? What should be the resistance between the battery negative terminal and the ground? You take that information, and measuring tools such as a voltmeter or a micrometer, feeler gauges, and compare what you are seeing, what is actually happening now, with what the computer is expecting to see. If you are able to determine that there is a fault, let's say for oxygen sensor heater, there is an entire circuit dedicated to the oxygen sensor heater, which starts from the battery, goes through the fuse box, and through a fuse and through a relay and to the sensor, with feedback also to the computer, to the engine control module. If there is a problem with, let's say, a blown fuse, obviously the oxygen sensor is not going to be getting enough voltage to heat it up to get to operating temperature, which means that it won't operate. The engine control module is not going to know that there's a fuse problem. The engine control module only sees that there's a problem with the oxygen sensor getting up to speed quick enough. It's expecting to see it activated within a certain amount of time. But because the problem is here, let's say a relay is burned out, replacing the sensor is going to do nothing. You're going to waste $180, $300, who knows how much the sensor costs, when it could have been something as simple as a $20 relay or a 50-cent fuse. Same thing goes with, let's go back to the P0420 question. If you have poor response in the catalytic converter and you have an exhaust leak, replacing the oxygen sensors and the air fuel ratio sensors and the catalytic converter might cost you over $1,000, when it probably could have been solved with a $5 exhaust gasket. Similarly, let's go back to P0300. You could replace the coil, you could replace the wires, you could replace the spark plugs, and spend $500 replacing all this stuff, only to find out that you have a timing problem on this camshaft, which is creating a misfire. So the point is to make sure that when you get a check engine light, is not telling you, oh, that's an oxygen sensor code, replace the oxygen sensors. No, test the oxygen sensor first and compare it to the expected specifications. Test the catalytic converter. Test it for leaks. Test the spark plug system, the spark plug wires, for proper voltage coming out, and make sure that there's no cracks. You do a little water spray test, and you might see that this thing might be arcing here when it's rainy. Well, that's not a problem with the spark plug, that's a problem with the spark plug wire. Would you rather replace $10 spark plug wire or a $10 spark plug? If you just replace everything, you don't know what you did. You don't know how you fixed it. Or you might not fix anything at all. Another one of my favorites, favorite misdiagnosis, car won't start. Oh, and somebody will say, yeah, you need a battery and you need an alternator and you need a starter, and the starter is buried down there. You're going to spend $600 on something that could have been fixed for something as simple as getting a new cable. A couple of weeks ago, I came back from vacation and I could not start my car. I checked battery voltage and I had 12.5, which wasn't bad for the fact that it was sitting for a month. Checked when I could get it started, I checked the alternator output and I was getting 13.5, and I was happy with that. But every once in a while, it still wouldn't turn over. Took a look at the old cable, and this thing was all corroded in here. And the corrosion, what happens is it impedes the flow of electricity. And what I did was I took a pair of jumper cables, took a negative jumper cable, and jumped from here to the engine block, and instant good connection, and was able to start the car every time, which told me that there was a problem here. This cable was not connecting properly. So how did I fix that? I didn't have to replace the battery, didn't have to replace the alternator, didn't have to replace the starter. All I had to do was replace this $8 cable, clean up the contacts here on the body, clean up the contact here on the block, and put in this new cable, and restored connectivity on the negative side, and haven't had a problem since. That cost me $8, didn't cost me $300 to replace all these other things, which if I had done that, replace the starter, replace the alternator, replace the battery, without this tiny little cable here, would have solved nothing and wasted a ton of money. So that's it. I just want to mention that, yes, you can get a free check engine light scan, but it won't tell you very much. Basically, all it's doing is telling you that you have a problem. What you still need is someone who is competent, who knows how these cars operate, what they're expecting to see, and how to test each separate component so that they can eliminate what the problem is. Once you eliminate all the other issues and you come down to the one fault, then you replace that one fault, you save yourself time, you save yourself money, and you end up with a reliable car. If you don't do that, basically you're just throwing money away. No reason to replace an entire exhaust system when you just have an exhaust leak. So just one thing that I would say if somebody says that you have to pay for diagnosis, go for it. Because, you know, as the saying goes, you pay for what you get. If you don't pay for what you get, well, what are you going to get? You're going to get someone's best guess, or so-and-so said this and that fixed it, and you're probably going to waste more money and time than just having diagnosed properly in the first place and replacing or adjusting the proper part. So just wanted to leave you with that note, and thank you for watching, and look forward to more videos talking about check engine light, car maintenance, car repair, and not going crazy, keeping your car reliable. Have a good day.